do you figure out how to lead in a way that feels good to you, that you find balance, where you feel that level of confidence and know that you're still making a difference? It's not always easy, and it's a bit of a journey. Today, I'm diving into the second half of my career journey where I talk about how I figured out how to lead with that sense of confidence, how I figured out how to align my work with my values, find some work-life balance, and thrive in leadership. In this half of my conversation with David Driver from Career Conversations, I'm diving into what I learned about how to lead well, the tools I used, the training I took, how I now turn that around and help thousands of women leaders do the same, because we really do want to make a difference, and sometimes that's hard. Dive into the second half of my conversation, take some notes about the things you want to learn and do and grow and how you want to do them, and I'll see you at the end. The best leaders identify their strengths, both their character strengths and their talent strengths, and they lead with those strengths. Some people are strong leaders. That's not one of my top strengths. Honestly, my top strength is learning. I'm a learner. And so that is what's helped me be a better leader, right? I have clients whose one of their top strengths is humor. And humor is such a powerful strength as a leader. Is not one of mine. Like, it does not come across well when I do it. But to be able to go into a tough conversation or a difficult time, I mean, just think COVID. And I'm not talking about like sarcastic jokes, but helping people make light of a situation, putting a mask on upside down, saying, "Oh my God, how are we going to get through this?" So it's identifying your strengths and then using your strengths. And that's back to integrity. When you are a person who has, you and I were both talking, I'm going to make a guess. We were both talking before we started. I'm going to guess that we're both a bit of an introvert. So if I'm not an outgoing, gregarious, that's not quite the right word, person, but I try and pretend to be, it's going to come across as inauthentic.
Yeah.
And people are going to get that. So I said I live north. I used to have to travel to Edmonton for meetings, and I would fly in for the day. So I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, fly in meetings, and then they're like, "Oh, well, let's go to the mall this evening and go shopping." And I'm like, no, I'm
No.
going back to my room and back to my strengths. I'm going to phone home and talk to the kids. Yeah, exactly. But I had to have the courage to say that, because if I don't, then I'm going to continue to stretch myself, be around people all evening, not going to bed till 11, 12 at night. And I'm going to go back in the next day and be bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to lead with my strengths, I have to say, this is my boundary. I need to go recharge. That's who I am. And then I'll come out better tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's well said, because I think people just view leadership as just like a binary option. It's a yes or a no. It's like, but I think there's so much more nuance, and even kind of thinking of your working profile. So you said you worked with women's leaders in nonprofit sectors.
Yeah.
So even looking at that demographics, it's like, a woman leader versus a man leader, let's say, might be two different styles, two different things, two different scenarios. Profit versus nonprofit. Again, that's probably a huge way, because again, someone could thrive in a nonprofit sector, but then if they wanted to be that exact same position in a profit sector, could be completely fly off the rails, right? So
yeah.
I don't know if you feel like, even if someone wasn't successful as a leader in some scenarios, I don't know if you would agree or disagree, where there is enough transferable skills, or there's enough knowledge there where, again, you could thrive as a leader, like in a different scenario or with a different group of people. I think there's just so much to it. And I don't know if you kind of encounter that. People kind of either self-defeat themselves and they say, "I'm not a good leader," and say, well, you haven't done a different scenario. You could thrive there, right?
Well, and it goes back to the skills. I think you need to, let's just use the example of running a staff meeting. Running a staff meeting in organization A looks very different than B, C, and D.
Yeah.
So even if you're taught how, this is how we run meetings here, and you move into another organization, you're still going to have to relearn that. But if your strength is honesty, in all of those organizations, you're going to bring in that honest approach or that humorous approach, or, whatever it is. The skills can be learned, how to navigate those difficult conversations, how to manage your time, how to, network with funders, or whatever the thing is. You can learn those skills, but you have to learn who you are. So I have a 6-month course that I do with women where they really dive deep into their traits and their strengths and start to own the ones they want. Personality can be changed. We think that personality is fixed. It's not. If I'm a complete introvert, I might have to get out of my shell a little bit. And I will probably always lean towards introversion, but I can also learn how to be a little bit more networking and create those relationships. There are some fundamental skills that leaders need. One that I often teach is hope. And hope does not, so when I talk about strengths, there's two strengths assessments that I use. One is the VIA character strengths, which is a free assessment anybody can do.
Hmm.
The other one is the Gallup Clifton strengths, which costs a little bit of money, not a ton. Um, but hope is one that not everybody lands high. But those people who learn to, express hope are more successful, and teams need it. And stop me if I'm going too deep here, but
No, go
there
for it.
are three parts of hope scientifically, and we often stop at the first one. So hope is a belief that tomorrow can be better than today. I get it. Like the example I often use again is COVID. We'll have enough masks. We'll figure it out. We'll, but people are like, you're throwing us into work at home. I don't have a proper setup in my computer. I don't have internet that's going to work, right? How am I going to do this? So the first part is a belief that tomorrow will be better than today. Part is agency or confidence, or like we have the resources or skills, we can make this happen. The third part is pathways, or what's called pathways thinking. And if plan A doesn't work, we'll do plan B, and plan B doesn't work, we'll do plan C. So again, I believe that we're going to get enough masks. I was working with a group home kind of, situation with a lot of the organizations. And, they were going through masks left and right. I believe we can get enough masks. We'll figure it out. We've got the funder working on it. We're talking to the hospital, and, I've got a good relationship with XYZ. And we're going into a meeting tomorrow. I've sent an email. Like when you walk the staff through that, they're like, okay, I believe you now. If
Yeah.
you just stop at, oh, we'll figure it out. They're like, how? How are you going to figure it out?
Yeah.
We want our leaders to inspire us, create that sense of hope, but we also want them to walk us through how that's going to happen.
Yeah. And to your point, because the whole time I'm thinking is that when someone becomes a leader or a manager or supervisor, somebody overseeing other staff, I always wonder, like, do they ever get formal training? Because I think the employer,
No.
well, you'd be the expert on that for sure. And then that's sort of leading up to my next question here is that I wonder a lot of the times the employer is thinking like, we see good things in you, we see good traits in you. I think they're making the decision to put this person as a supervisor, leader, manager.
Yeah.
Just based on personality traits or just, their work ethic, their work style, things like that. I think very rarely people get in those positions with formal training, with any sort of things to back it up in terms of knowledge and theories and things like that. So I guess part one of my question would be, do you think there could be more that organizations should be doing to train their leaders? And then if that's the case, like what should be the bare minimum, right? If you're promoting someone to become a leader, like what types of things should they be doing at the very, very least, right?
Well, let me start with when we move somebody into leadership position, most of us are already struggling with our workload, and we're
Yeah,
like so ready to dump it,
sure.
right? We're like, here you go, you take over, like, and we're like now suddenly picking up more stuff. So there's not the proper transfer of knowledge, support. We're not able to dive deep. And the higher you get in leadership, the less support you get from the person above you. So as you advance, you're less likely to get any training or support. We sometimes will send people to, supervision 101 kind of courses, which is good. It's a great starting point. But again, I can learn how, I need to, have minimum every 3 months a one-to-one with my staff. Okay, that's great. I learned that. I know that. I know I have to like do some team building activities. I know I have to, but how? I'm uncomfortable doing that. I don't know how to give feedback. I don't know how to tell somebody they're screwing up and fix it. So that's the part that's missing. And while I would love both nonprofit and for-profit sector to give more training, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Mhm.
For a lot of reasons. Like I say, we're just strapped in so many ways. What I did and what I encourage leaders to do is to create your own personal and professional learning curriculum.
Yeah.
You need to take responsibility. Nobody told me I had to go to university and get my degree. Nobody told me I had to read, a crap ton of leadership books.
Yeah.
And personal development books, right? Like I learned in so many different ways. And so I'm like, okay, what's the missing puzzle pieces that I need to learn? And I started creating that plan. And again, I would go back to my boss and say, I need to go on this course. Or, if I had control over my budget, I'd be like, I'm going to slide this leadership book into the budget this year. Or, I took some responsibility for that.
Hmm.
And I think too often we're playing victim saying, nobody's helping me.
Yeah.
You're right. Nobody's going to help you. You got to stand up for yourself and tell people what you need and want. And some of it happens after work. That's the other thing. People are like, well, I don't want to do anything after work. I'm like, this is going to help you as an individual. And I can't, like, 99.9% of the people I coach are like, oh my God, that helped me in my marriage or with my kids or with my in-law or, like, yes, this is work, but it's who you are is who you are.
Yeah. And I that sort of stems to, like, to be a good leader is also just fleshing out like positive qualities of your personality, like, empathy or organization or confidence, right? So it's really to be a good leader is really to kind of strengthen those areas. And like you just said, like that's transferable to all aspects of your life, right? So
And learning to ask for help. Like, let's say you're
yeah,
not very good at organization. Well, then you better find somebody who is, right?
yeah, for sure.
I often, one of the strengths on the strengths is zest, that sort of energy and enthusiasm for life, which notoriously lands at the bottom around the world for everybody.
Okay.
But if you're running a staff meeting and you're trying to do some team building, you need some like energy and pep, right?
Yeah.
That may not be you. So
Yeah.
you might look around the room and see who that person is. There's probably a cheerleader on the team or somebody who loves to do that stuff, then delegate it. You don't have to do everything.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of leads me again to the second question I had was trends, because as you know, leadership, it isn't just a stagnant thing throughout the decades. It is evolving, changing constantly, as is the world of work, right? So
Yeah.
I think I've heard enough think pieces on how millennials want to work a job and how they act and all that stuff. But I think probably the biggest change we've seen in the last few decades is, the whole concept of a work-life balance. And, not to generalize, but I'm sure, like, 50 years ago, leadership was more like seeing your staff as like chess pieces, like, you're moving pieces around a board and that's it. But now they are human beings. They have lives outside and they have emotions and they have ups and downs, lefts and rights. What are you kind of seeing in terms of strong like leadership trends? Is there stuff that you've worked on in the past few years that's sort of emerging or new or sort of new thinking, or do you kind of see in the near future, or even the distant future, how leaders maybe should have to evolve to kind of adapt to their workers? I don't know. This is a very broad question.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, one of the things that I do a lot of teaching is around emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one area that is starting to be awakened into the leadership world. And again, I primarily work with women. We've been trained in masculine role models, and a lot of the women that were leading us were leading from a masculine kind of framework. You don't show emotions, you don't bring emotions in. And so, you just talked about empathy. Again, here's what we say. We need to develop trust in teams. We need to create empathy, but shut your emotions off, right? Like how do you bring in only some of the emotions, but not all the other ones?
Yeah.
And when we are leading teams, again, hope is a feeling, it's an emotion. So if I want to create that sense of hope, I have to create that feeling in myself. I have to understand what hope feels like, which means I might also think about what despair feels like, or hopelessness. And so when we can start to expand that emotional vocabulary and learn that, and then learn to manage our emotions, that's part of the problem. Is lots of leaders is like, yeah, I was frustrated, but nobody knew. I'm like, I think everybody knew. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with being angry.
Oh
It's
yeah.
how you express that anger. Or you can have a feeling, you can experience a feeling that does not mean you need to express it at all. So you can manage that and rein it in and maybe go back and do some journaling that night, talk to somebody and sort through it. And then you might express it in a different way tomorrow. Sometimes within that meeting, you've got like 2 seconds to rein in that emotion before it comes across all wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the trends that I'm seeing is more people, both men and women, just starting to awaken that emotional intelligence in leadership, starting to recognize that the strongest leaders are emotionally intelligent. They've learned how to recognize and manage those emotions and recognize the impact their words, their moods, their way of being hits the people on their team.
Yeah, and that's another element too, where I think it's some people think if you're in a leadership position, like you're no longer like a human being yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. It goes back to the whole idea of work-life balance. And this is the other trend that, I hope I have influenced today so that my granddaughters experience something different is that whole work-life balance.
Yeah.
We have to, again, back to taking ownership for it. We throw it out there. Oh my God, it's just like the world is like that. I can't do anything about it. Yeah, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be the one to get up and walk away from your desk and go have a lunch break.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to tell you to do that. Nobody's going to walk in and hold your hand and take you out of the office. You need to say it's time for a break, and I will be a better worker as a result of it. And so that work-life balance, I was talking the other day with some leaders. We were doing training, the 6-month leadership course, and both of them, two of the people that were on the call were on holidays. And I'm like, you're coming to the call on holidays, right? But we talked about it. What if we normalized working on holidays? Like, we've got this rigid rule that if you work on holidays, shame on you, right?
Mhm.
What if we said, it's okay for me to check my email and respond to a couple things for 1 hour a day when I'm on holidays,
Yeah.
and I will feel more relaxed, and I will come back to not everybody wants to do that. But what if it was okay to do that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, everybody has to find their way, and that's the what work-life balance is. It's not like 9 to 5, shut it off, walk out the door. But what about the dentist appointment or your kids, performance at school? It goes back and forth, which also means work does come into your personal life, but
Yeah.
you have to choose how you're doing that, when you're doing it, and create those boundaries.
Yeah, and the last question I had on this topic was if someone was starting from scratch, maybe they're listening to this show and they're thinking, I've never thought about being a leader before. Maybe that sounds interesting to me, but I don't know. Should I talk to my boss about it first? Should I maybe look into courses? Like, what would your first step recommendation be? What would your advice be to someone who's just they're not sure, they never thought about it before, but how can they kind of start developing themselves and start thinking about themselves in this way?
I would start with personal development.
Yeah,
Start to just look at, who am I? How do I show up? What impact do I want to have in the world? What are my values? What's important to me? Just get a sense of that first, because sometimes people are like moving into leadership because status, money,
sure.
probably not the way you want to go, right?
No, I wouldn't say so.
It's not gonna be the best option. But yes, start to look at courses, start to look at books, start to look at talking to your boss. It depends on where you're at and where you feel comfortable. And again, this goes back to your strengths. If, like me, you're a learner, you're going to head to the library. If you have a really strong relationship with your line manager, or maybe you have a mentor,
Hmm.
maybe it's not somebody at work. But look at all of the times in your career where you've done your biggest growth, your changes, your advancements. What's worked for you? Do that again,
Yeah,
right? Because that's what's going to help you, really understand it. And you have to do the inner work, grow yourself, but the outer work of learning the skills of leadership too. So just be prepared that it's not just jumping into a position and getting the job description and the title,
yeah,
because you'll fall flat in your face if you do that.
yeah. I think there's a lot of leaders out there who don't have the role of leader, right? And I think they need an opportunity or they need to see that in themselves first, whenever that should come, right? So for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and I think of all of the volunteer positions that I've held over the years. My kids are in Taekwondo, while I'm on the Taekwondo board, or like wherever you can show up as a leader and practice leadership consciously,
Hmm.
right? Right now and we often think of Toastmasters as that ability to learn how to speak better. Actually, there's a huge leadership component,
Yeah.
and that's what I say to people. Dive in as a leader, whether you have the title of leader and you're on the executive committee, or whether, like, say, you're just sitting around the room. Demonstrate leadership and you'll start to really grow in that area.
I'm of the opinion that Toastmasters curriculum should be like mandatory high school teaching. Uh,
100%. Yes, yes, yes.
that's a topic for
Yeah.
another day. So yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. Before we go, because I did want you to talk a little bit about, yeah, you do have a book, like you mentioned, and you have another
Yeah.
book coming up. So if someone wanted to check you out and check out your work, I'm assuming your books would be a good place to start. So maybe
Sorry.
you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
describe a little bit about your current book and maybe your upcoming book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website. It's simple. It's kathyarcher.com, Kathy with a K. My first book is Mastering Confidence, and it's all about discovering your leadership potential by using your inner guidance system. So I teach a model in there where you learn to kind of tune in to yourself, pause and ponder, and then shift is the pivot and proceed.
Hmm.
It's pausing. We don't take enough time to stop and pause. And so if you want to develop that level of confidence, you've got to step back and go, what happened in that meeting? When did I fall apart? And again, that thinking about that, what was the trigger? Why did I shut down or get ticked off or whatever it was? And then, okay, now what do I need to learn? How will I grow better? And doing that kind of that process. So mastering confidence helps you learn that model. The book that I'm working on is character-driven leadership. And so it takes that model to the next step. So it takes it from a circle to a figure or Mobius or figure 8. So pause, pond, pivot, proceed is all of the inner work. And then you flip to the other side and you go people. I have to go have those conversations with my people. I have to engage. I have to create that team, and stuff happens out there.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be that character-driven leader, lead with integrity and whatever other things I want to be, then I have to do the inner work and I have to go out and test drive it with my people, probably fail, flounder, and flumble, and come back and do the, okay, what happened? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to grow? What strengths didn't I use? What values wasn't I honoring? Or did? What made that go really well? And it's that process of going back and forth to really develop that strong integrity-led leadership,
Yeah.
which is what the world is missing sometimes.
Yeah. Awesome. And you said that's coming out March of 25?
March of 2025, yes.
Sounds like so far from now, but not really.
Oh my God, and I've been working on it forever. But I just submitted the final copy to the editor, so we're on a roll. So it will come out then. I also have my podcast, Surviving to Thriving podcast, really good place to learn. Again, my membership is the training library, $20 a month. Like, it's really cheap because, I know not because the majority of people that come into that are paying for it themselves. That's the other piece. Again, we're uncomfortable asking our boss for support. We're saying, I need some leadership training, or the budget just isn't there.
Yeah.
So I've really made the membership, affordable. And then my favorite place to hang out is Instagram. All of my social media is at Kathy D. Archer. But yeah, I love Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah. Congratulations on all your great work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. Before we get going though, I did warn you a little bit when we first talked, was we have a tradition on the show before I let my guests go. We do have an impossible trivia question. I like to end with a couple of fun laughs and things like that. So
Okay,
Kathy, are you ready for your impossible?
Yeah, we were playing trivia on the weekend on the drive home with the grandkids. And at one point, the granddaughter says, we play, the animal games, right? You have to guess the animal. She's like, do you even know your animal, Grandma? Maybe not.
So you're going to bode well. That's a good sign. Okay. Kathy, how many emails do you roughly get a week, would you say? Do you like answering emails, sending emails?
People actually are surprised that my inbox is basically empty, which is crazy.
Oh my goodness.
I keep my inbox clean. How many do I get a week? I don't know. 100,
Wow.
200. Yeah. Half of them are junk, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the impossible trivia question I have for you, the first email was sent in 1971. So we've been emailing people for over like 50 years now or so. But Kathy, your impossible trivia question, what was the very first message sent in the very first email ever back in 1971?
Something tells me I've heard this. It's something like food. Something to eat, or yeah, that's my best guess.
Food. You want to get some lunch? Maybe was back then. The answer is the first top row of the keyboard. So it's QWERTY you up.
Oh yes.
The person didn't. They were just a test message, so they just ran their finger across the top line of the keyboard. So QWERTY you pop. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's probably there's enough vowels in there to make it sound like a real word. But there you go. There you go.
That's the trivia. And I didn't get it.
There you go. Now you can quiz your grandkids. They probably know that one.
Yeah.
Kids are very smart these days.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you, Kathy. Again, did you want to just say where would be the best way to get in touch with you if somebody wanted to connect with you? Would it be through your website? Would it be through LinkedIn? What would
yeah.
Would it be email, perhaps?
Yeah, email. Anybody can email me. Absolutely. Kathy at silverrivercoaching.com. There's 2 R's, silverrivercoaching.com. Again, my website is kathyarcher.com. You can find me on Instagram, Kathy D. Archer, and LinkedIn. I actually have a weekly newsletter that goes out on LinkedIn.
Oh, awesome.
So, or weekly-ish newsletter. So yeah, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, there's a newsletter you can grab there.
Okay. And I'll have all that information in the notes as well if anybody wanted to go click there. So yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you so much, Kathy. Have a great rest of your day.
And there you have it. That's my career journey. I don't know if it's similar to yours or if some of it resonates, but I suspect it does. The nonprofit world has a certain way of treating its leaders, and sometimes that leaves us feeling that sense of imposter syndrome or doubt. And part of the big reason is we did not get the leadership training to lead. We moved from frontline up to that manager position without the training and support to do our job well. And if you've been missing that leadership learning, that training, that guidance, that's what I've developed in the training library. So if you are interested in getting some of that support, learning the skills that you missed, then head over to kathyarcher.com/library. I'll put the link below as well. And learn how to lead. Figure out how to lead in a way that feels aligned with your values So you're not sacrificing your personal life, compromising those values, and you feel good about the work you're doing. If you're enjoying these episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like below, send a comment because I love to hear what's going on in your world. Ask me questions. If there's something you want a future video about, let me know, and I will see you in the next episode.